Yo, what's poppin', everyone? It's your boy Godified, bringing you another Outriders build video. Now, the last video I brought out was back when the game first came out. Took me a little while between leveling up all my characters and everything to get the final piece that I needed for the Borealis, which I had been building for the longest time. And that was the helmet. I could not get it to drop. I finally got it to drop. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and get into it. Alright, so this build, while we're getting into the whole thing, it's a non-meta. I don't do metas. This build was specifically meant for my playstyle. I want to be tanky, but at the same time provide support, while also being able to do my own damage as well. Something that if I'm playing solo, might not gold, but that was the first build. It's kind of sketch. But this build, let's go into this, and I'll explain. Each piece of gear and each stat that I have on here is specific for a very good reason. So we'll go over the guns first. I have an absolute 0. Alright. I'm running with the ultimate freezing bullets and Fortress. Fortress because of the 43% damage bonus overall that you get for having a minimum of 50,000 armor. That 50k armor, once you hit it, you get the full 43% boost. Anything below, you're running shy. So as long as you have 50k armor at the bare minimum, you will get that 43% bonus. My death shield, Fortress, concentration blast. Running concentration blast simply for crowd control, mainly. Killing shots cause enemies to explode, dealing 113,079 damage multiplied by the maximum number of 6 enemies within a 5-meter radius around the original target. It's a second cooldown. That's a level 50 variant. So when you're looking at the numbers, keep that in mind. It is a level 50. So take that 113,000, multiply it by 6 if there's 6 enemies there. You're getting well over 600,000 damage off of one enemy that blows up, which in turn should wipe the entire battlefield, at least right there in front of you with anything around it. Pistols, basic, just running Torment and Agony with its basic. Now for the gear. Borealis 3-piece set. Alright, before we get into why I have the mods on here the way that I have them, keep in mind the bonus at the bottom. Increase weapon damage on frozen enemies by 90%. That is a passive. There is no and or must use. There is just a period. That is end of sentence, making that a solid passive increase for you. Also, critical hit damage is increased by 10% for all party members for 8 seconds after the cold snap usage. That is, whenever you use cold snap, you get that secondary bonus for you and your teammates. That's an additional 10% crit hit damage. It's not the best. What we wanted this gear piece, so we can have the 3-piece set for, was for the weapon damage on frozen enemies, which I'll get into once we break into the skills and so forth. Then you have, so on the helmet, it's bonus firepower, status power, long range damage. Every piece of the Borealis top three have those stats. Um, we're running twins for the Cryo Turret. Two turrets can be placed before triggering the cooldown. This is great for sustain. That turret will keep you alive in most cases. So having two of them is just extra damage, extra sustain. Then we have the long winter where cold snap has increased radius. Basically covers the entire map. Basically. If there's an enemy on the map, it's going to get frozen. Moving on to the chest. Icicle Storm. Cold Snap, killing enemies frozen by this skill makes them explode for 252,004 damage in a 5-meter radius. This, when paired up with Concentration Blast, is stupid amounts of damage. You can basically take down bosses and even bigger enemies if they're inside of a cluster. So stupid. All you have to do is target the weakest one in the cluster. Boom. Everything is dead. So you don't have to technically waste ammo on anything. Moving on. You have the pants. Same stats. Captain Hunter for obvious reasons. Increase your damage against elites by 25%. More damage, the better. You get those. You get that off of the cannonball gloves, I believe. Also going with freezing boost. Boost your damage against enemies afflicted by freeze by 15%. This is another must. Going into the gloves, we have bonus firepower, cooldown reduction, status power. Cooldown reduction is necessary because our skills, although they have a lot of cooldown within the skill tree, you still need that extra cooldown for this to actually work. You can trade it off if you want to for something else, but I prefer the cooldown reduction. We go with Painful Chill. Cold Snap applies an extra 37,154 damage to all enemies afflicted by the skill. This is really nice. It's extra damage. Even if they're at a distance and you haven't reached them yet, when you're popping your Cold Snap, they're taking damage until you get to them, which in most cases, if you're getting to them, they should be pretty much dead by the time you get there, off of the amount of times that you'll use Cold Snap. Then we have Damage Absorber. My personal preference, I love the additional armor and resistance. Just my playstyle. If you want, you could trade that out for something a little bit more damaging if you really need it. I prefer not to. I like it. Like I said, I prefer having a little bit more armor for tankiness. But that's a trade-off. You can trade that out for whatever skill you find more fit for a DPS build. I'm going to keep it the way that it is. Boots. Same three stats. Bonus firepower, status power, cooldown reduction. Then we go into Sharp Eye. Killing enemies while aiming down sights grants you 16,089 firepower for 20 seconds, and it could stack up to 3 times. That is a lot of damage. That is a lot of damage. That firepower increase is huge. Okay. Then I have Dum Dum Bullets on here just for the extra 10% off of assault weapons. I haven't been lucky to get a better piece of boots. To be honest, we all know how crap the drop rates and everything are on this game. I just haven't gotten lucky enough. I play other characters also, so I kind of split my time between all four. It is what it is. But the Dum Dum Bullets is also tradable if you want to trade that out and put something different. Um, Other than that, I've gone over everything here. Um, yeah, I've covered everything in the gear, so let's go ahead and look at the skills that I run. I run the Cryo Turret right here, as, you know, expected. I do run Fixing Wave. Again, I am not a meta kid. I don't run Blighted Ammo. I see no purpose in it. I don't like using it on controller. It's way harder to move the sticks around than it is on PC. When most people put builds together, they fail to explain this, that PC and console have different metas. And certain metas that work on PC will not work on console, unless, of course, you are one of the very few that are very accurate with sticks. But even then, I don't use it. I think it's trash. I do. I think it's trash. And this is my build, so fuck the meta. Then I also run Cold Snap, which is essential for this build. Um, as you can see, the cooldowns. This is why I wanted to put some cooldown reduction. The Borealis kind of screws us on the cooldown reduction, so we basically have a little bit of time in between our usages, which really isn't too bad, but we'll get into that. Class tree all the way down, the middle. We don't stop for anything up top at all. There's no point. The only things that we're going up for is exposing toxin, and we're doing that because then we get the vulnerable afflicted on enemies is 40% more effective. We pair this with this one, and we get 80% more effectiveness off of vulnerability. This is honestly, it's not a must. If you want to, you could trade those three mods out, these two, plus this one. You could trade those out, and if you want to be more tanky, you can go into armor over here. If you want, you can also go into the skill leech right here, so your skills give you more health back. It's up to you, or you can even go into this and for extra resistance. Honestly, the choice is yours, or even go into health regeneration and get turret decay. You can do that as well. If you were going more into a healing build, trying to do support, you can use this. This is my preference. I like this run just because I'm putting vulnerable on everything. I also go with this for enemies below 30% health receive 20% more damage. Anything that gives us more damage, since we are not stacking firepower or weapon damage as per the skill tree, is very essential. We're going Tech Shaman mainly because everything we're using are gadgets. We want to get as much use out of those gadgets to cause as much frost as possible. So going back into the gear, let's go into the stats. So one thing I want to point out in the stats is skill damage bonus right here is 683.2%, and my status power is 179.8. Okay, status power, the increase to the damage of burning, toxic, and bleeding, and the increase to the duration of freeze, ash, vulnerable, and weakness. For some odd reason, regardless of what you have equipped, okay, we'll do the math here. I have 30% here on my gun. Alright, we have another 30, that's 60%, 90%, 120%, 150%, 180% here in status power. For some reason, they hit us at 179.8. Makes no sense, but there you go. That's your hard cap for status power. If there's diminishing returns, I don't know. But anyway, we go into status power specifically for the duration. That's going to be your vulnerable, and that's going to be your freeze. When we go back into the class tree, we're also taking freeze afflicted by enemies lasts 20% longer. And I believe there's another one for that as well, right? Yeah, right here. Freeze afflicted on enemies 20% longer. Between the two of these, you're getting a 40% longer duration on top of our status power. This keeps basically everything on the battlefield frozen until it's shot at or not. Most of the time, if you have a high enough cooldown rate, you can basically lock down the entire map by just spamming your cold snap. Now, this is basically the full duration of the freeze for how long we have it. And when you look at this, freezes the enemies and it also applies vulnerable. Now, what's really nice about this is if you're looking at the skills right here, Frostbite, Cold Snap. While frozen by the skill, enemies have reduced armor by 35% for the duration of this status. Your Cold Snap is dropping the enemy's armor. It is freezing them in place. And on top of that, you are not taking damage by them at all because they can't fire at you. They're frozen. Now, with that being said, we are also stacking multiple things towards where we do more damage against frozen enemies. If you're shooting at a frozen enemy, technically the Borealis is supposed to give you 90% increase. That is not combined into 10% more damage. And over here, 30% more damage. That's 40% additional damage on top of 15% damage here, which would be a total of 55% additional damage towards frozen enemies. Okay, then you have your main gun, the Absolute Zero, which has a 1-second cooldown on inflicting freeze on an enemy. The only enemies that do not get permanently stun locked and frozen with this build are like the elites, the bosses, when they use their little debuff aura, where basically they're immune to any kind of a status ailment. But again, it inflicts so many different, it just inflicts so much on them. I mean, you do so much damage. So anyway, this is the build that I run with. I've sat here, I've run my mouth long enough for this video, basically trying to break down everything. I'll go ahead and run some gameplay in the background also to kind of showcase it. And during that, I'll kind of talk to you guys a little bit, explain some things in the build on what's going on and so forth. But anyway, it's your boy Godified. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let this part of the video cut, and I'm going to go ahead and throw on some actual gameplay. Peace.
There's still gold in that cave. Can't you hear it? It's just begging us to drill it.
Y'all motherfuckers can't put together a good game at all. Fuck you, people can fly. Fuck you. Alright, so we have to address something here real quick. So, when we're looking at the damage on my weapon, it's a 94.3k, right? On top of that, also using Fortress, which should ramp this up another 43%, because that covers all damage types in total. Not to mention, we're freezing enemies, so we're getting 90% increase of weapon damage just off of frozen enemies. This also should come in with 15% here off of freezing boost. Not to mention all the buffs that are coming out of the skill tree. Plus, also when inflicting the cryo attack, um, cold snap, when inflicting that on the enemies, should be also applying vulnerable, making the enemies take more damage from ailments as far as like bullets and so forth. So the enemies should be taking a shit ton more damage. But let's go back in here. I want to showcase something real quick because apparently people can fly don't know what the fuck they're doing when it comes to building a fucking game of this type, since no matter what they do, they keep fucking destroying everything. So, 2,000 damage. That's how much damage I'm doing per shot. 2,000. 2,000 damage. 13,000. I'm critting for like no damage. Look at this. My damage is being negated. I'm literally losing 90% damage when I should be gaining way more. They're taking majority of my fucking damage away from my build, crippling me in the process, not being able to actually play this build properly. And from what I've also been reading on Reddit after the fact of this, is other people are going through the exact same thing. Which is a fucking shame too, because kind of remember something about when this game was in its original state, like before it actually released. People Can Fly clearly told us we can't wait to see the builds that you come up with, because that is the point of why their system had, so many mods in it. That's why this game has so much involved, is for that sole reason. But if I do this, look at that. I clear everything the fuck out, as long as I can kill a tiny ass ad. But if we're fighting something like this, look at it. Look at my damage. The damage only scales based off of the little shit. Look at this. And then you get one shot. Like, even with all the armor that I'm stacking, you still get one shot, which is stupid. So, I know this is a build video. And I'm supposed to be like showcasing the, how OP this build is and how broken this build is supposed to be to kind of entice you to build it this way. I mean, everything in this game now is theory crafting. Because nothing fucking works as it's supposed to. At all. Nothing. Look at the damage and everything that was done. I mean, we're putting out shit numbers. All because what's supposed to be amplifying our damage is reverting it backwards. I can't.